A lot have happened in the world of web development in 2021, and I know sometimes it's hard to keep up with the changes. This is why in this tutorial I will show you how to create a responsive website according to the latest standards and trends. What's more, I will show you how to publish your website on the internet using a free hosting. I am Michał from mdbootstrap.com, and today, together with you, we'll make a beautiful website using HTML, CSS and latest Bootstrap 5. Take a look what we'll code today. This project has everything a good, simple website needs. Stunning intro with a slider with beautiful photos in the background, navigation with the logo, dynamic links such as drop-downs, notifications and avatar. Below we have the content of the page where we use grid, photos, typography and even a cool effects like ripple. Have a look. After clicking the image you can see this nice ripple effect. We also have a components such as cards and buttons used in responsive grid. And if you focus your A side, you will also see a subtle shadows that give the design a flavor. And finally, we have a nicely centered aesthetic form. And below there is a footer with additional useful elements for the users. Everything here is 100% responsive. Just take a look. All the pictures remain responsive and adjust to the screen. The content elements are arranged one under the other thanks to use grid. The form and the footer behave as expected as well. Everything is pixel perfect on both desktop and mobile. I have to admit that this is a very attractive project, so without further ado, let's move on to coding. In this tutorial, I will use Material Design for Bootstrap, which is a free library that greatly extends the capabilities of regular Bootstrap and provides many useful features, like for example, better look, additional components, free templates, and even a free hosting for your projects. To download Material Design for Bootstrap, just go to mdbootstrap.com and click big blue Get Started button. Then click big red Download button. Next, unzip the package. And then open it with your favorite code editor. I am using Visual Studio Code. Next, double-click on index.html file and drag it to the browser. Or if you are using Visual Studio Code as me, you can install very useful extension called Live Server. And thanks to this you can enable live reload, so anytime you change anything in your code, the browser will refresh automatically. I already have Live Server installed, so all I need to do right now is to right-click on index.html file and click Open with Live Server. Now let's delete the existing content to prepare the index.html file to work with the new project. Select and remove everything between Start Your Projects Here comments. Save the file, and now we are ready to start our work. Let's go to the documentation of mdbootstrap.com. Note that all mdbootstrap components will perform the same as regular Bootstrap, but will have more features, better design, and overall everything will be better here. Let's start by building a basic structure. Header, main, and footer. At the beginning we need a navigation bar. In the search box type navbar. And let's copy this basic example. Click Show Code and copy. Then inside of the header paste this code and save the file. And you will notice the navbar in our project. Now let's have a closer look how this navbar actually works. We have a lot of classes here, and this navbar class basically just makes the navbar works. If we remove this, it's all broken. Next class, navbar expand LG, specify at what size of the screen navbar should be expanded. Right now it says that on large screens the navbar should be expanded, and below that size it should be collapsed. So if we resize it, we can see a hamburger. If you go to mdbootstrap documentation and you type breakpoints in the search box, Here you can find a useful table that tells you at what size, what breakpoints is available. So if we want that our navbar should be expanded on extra large screen, so bigger than 1200 pixels, we can use this breakpoint. If we want to use extra large, so bigger than 1400 pixels, we'll use XXL. And the same for smaller sizes, we can use medium, small, and extra small is a default. So we don't need to use any breakpoint for this size because by default Bootstrap is mobile first. The next two classes, navbar light and bg light, are related to each other. Let me change the breakpoint to LG and let's go back to these two classes. So bg light specify the color of the background. So if we change it to bg danger, it will be red, and if we change it to bg primary, it will be blue. If we want to know more about Bootstrap colors, in the search box type colors, and here we can find all available colors, the full palette of colors. And navbar light class specify if the navbar elements should be dark or light. So right now we are using navbar light class, but the background is quite dark, so it would be better if we use navbar dark. And over there you can see the links are lighter. But if we want to make elements like these icons on the right light as well, we need to specify it explicitly here. Where is this? Here we are using text reset, but if we change it to text white, you can see it becomes white. And the same here. Where is this? Text reset white. Below we can see a container fluid class, and it specifies if the content should be extended full available width or it should has some margins. So it isn't very well visible on the small screens, but if we change it to the maximum size, now you can see there are a margin on the left and on the right, and if we change it to container fluid, it will be extended full width. Below we have a toggle button, and it's our hamburger icon. So there is nothing especially that we should do about this, but there is one thing worth noticing, that we are using a data attribute here to connect this button with this collapsible wrapper. So as you can see, we are using data MDB target, and we are using this ID, the ID of this collapsible wrapper, to connect this button with this wrapper over here. And the rest are attributes related to accessibility. So it's better not to change anything over here. Just remember to use the same ID here and here. Below is a navbar brand, so basically it's a logo. And there is something I should do about this particular case, because as you can see on a light background, this image logo looks fine, but on a dark background, on the blue background, it doesn't look very well. So what we can do is, instead of this image, we can use a simple text, or we can also use MDB icons. So if you go to mdbootstrap.com documentation and you type icons, you can easily create your own logo type, or you can use one of the available 1541 icons. And there is an icon for MDB logo type. So we can use this and we can increase the size, something like this. Below we have an ordered list with links, and as you can see we have a few classes here. Navbar nav is necessary class that we need to use on unordered list inside of the navbar, that these items inside of the list behave properly. The next class let us specify at what size the items should be, at what side the items should be aligned. So if we change this E to S, it will be aligned to the right side, and if we change it back to E, it will be aligned to the left side. Margin bottom to specify the margin to the bottom that we want to add to this specific element, and margin bottom LG0 specify the breakpoint, and basically it says that on a large screens we want a 0 bottom margin. And inside of the list we can see the links, and every link is wrapped inside of the list item, and this list item has a class nav item, and the link has a class nav link. So these classes are basically necessary to make the items of the list works properly. Of course, inside of href attribute you can add your links, and then if you click it, you will be redirected to the site that you added to the project. Alright, that's enough about the navbar. It's very large component, so if you want to learn more about this, we have a dedicated tutorial, and you will find a link to this tutorial in the description of this video. Now move on to the next elements of our project. And the next element will be a carousel. So go to MD Bootstrap documentation, and in the search box type carousel. Now scroll down a bit and let's copy the code of this basic example. Now let's paste it below the navbar. As you can see, it works out of the box, but there are a few problems with this. First of all, the images aren't stretched full height. As you can see below the carousel, we have a white space here, and we don't want that. We want that all the images were stretched full available height and width. And the second problem is that if we change one image, if we change it, you will notice that they have a different ratio. So it doesn't look good. We want that, doesn't matter what the ratio is, what the natural ratio is of a given image, we want all of them to keep the same size, the same height and the same width. To achieve this effect, we will need to write a few lines of custom CSS. So at the beginning, let's remove all the content of the carousel from each of the slide. So let's remove the image and the caption, because we'll implement this completely different way. And right now our carousel seems broken, but it's still here, as you can see, but there is nothing inside of this. No pictures, no captions, no text. And what we want to do is, instead of adding images with img elements as it was before, we'll add it as background to every item inside of the carousel. So we will set a specific size to each of the item, and this size will be 100% of available width and height, and then we'll set the image as a background, and this way it can have always the same ratio, so always 100% width and height. How we can achieve this? First, we need to set a 100% of height to carousel item, to carousel inner, and to the carousel itself, because if we don't set a height, our images won't be visible. So let's open a style tags here, and let's grab an ID of this carousel. And let's set a height to 100 viewport height. Now we should do the same for a carousel inner element, this element, and for each of the carousel item and for the active class as well. So let's replace this ID with carousel inner. But instead of adding these classes this way, we can add this like this to do not repeat ourselves. So let's remove this. And now let's add a carousel item class, carousel item, and a carousel item active. Now you cannot see the effect, but if we change this for a second to the background color, let's say red, now you can see that this is stretch full available high. If we remove these classes, it won't be visible. So we need to set a 100 viewport height to all these items. Remove this color. The next thing we need to do is to set a background to each of the slides, each of the item inside of the carousel. So let's set a carousel item and set background image to URL, and I will use the image that I prepared before. As you can see, we have a problem here because right now the same image is set for all the slides. So what we can do with this is to use a pseudo class nth child and specify the number of the child. And right now, if we copy this, and we change the picture and we change the number to 2, and then we'll copy this one more time, change the number and change the picture, you will see that we have a different picture for every slide. The next thing we should improve here is to set the images exactly in the middle, and we will use a few CSS properties to achieve this. Background repeat, no repeat, background size cover, and background position center. And right now, as you can see, it's perfectly in the middle, even if we change the size of the window. So this set of these properties will adjust it perfectly to the screen. So let's copy this to the other slides and let's save the file. Now it looks good. Another thing I want to improve here is to remove the color from the navbar. I want it to be transparent. So what we can do is to remove the color class over here, and right now, as you can see, we have a white bar over here. So what we can do is to set some negative margin to the carousel, and let's use this ID. Margin top. Let's see what size is this bar. It's 66.6 pixels. Now the problem is that our carousel overlaps the navbar, but we can easily fix this by increasing the Z index to our navbar, and let's set it to 100. And now our navbar is visible. It would be also nice if the links have a bit stronger colors, so what we can do is to add text white class, the same as we did with the icons on the right side. Let's add it to 2 more links. Next, let's add some text to the slides. So scroll down to the carousel, and here inside of the first slide, let's create H1, and let's type how to make a website, and below let's add H2, and let's add a subheading in 2022. And of course we don't want it to be in the top left corner, but we want to center it exactly in the middle, vertically and horizontally. By the way, let's stop a carousel for a second from sliding, so we can see the first slide when we work on this. So to align the content vertically and horizontally, we will use a Flexbox. So let's wrap this text inside of a div. And now we'll add a few classes. We'll add dflex to enable a Flexbox, and then we'll add justify content center to align it horizontally. Then we'll add align item center to align it vertically. But there is one problem. Our Flexbox classes works properly, but the wrapper isn't stretched full height. So it aligns it horizontally and vertically, but it doesn't have a proper height. So what we can do is to add H100 to set a height to 100% of available space. Now we don't want this H1 and H2 to set in line. We want it to stack one under another. So we'll add another div. And now to this div, we'll add a text center, and we also add text white class. Flexbox is an extensive topic, and if you want to learn more about this, we have a dedicated tutorial, and you will find a link to this tutorial in the description of this video. So have a look at this if you are not sure what exactly happened here. One more problem we need to solve is the lack of a contrast. As you can see, our text is barely visible here, and the same problem is with the navbar. So what we can do is to go to mdbootstrap.com and type masks in the search box, and we'll use mask to increase the contrast. So how does it work? We need a wrapper mask, and then we will set background color to these masks. So let's try to do this. We need to add another wrapper, and we'll place the entire Flexbox with a content inside of this wrapper. And now let's set a class mask. Then we need to add an inline CSS, and we'll set a background color to HSLA format. And then we will set 0%, 0%, and alpha channel, so this is a transparency, we'll set to, let's say, 0.6. And now it looks definitely much better. So by manipulating the last value, so the alpha channel, we can increase or decrease the contrast. So right now it's very low, and if we change it to 0.9, it's very strong. So I think 0.6 is nice. You can also play with different colors. So for example, you can set the background color to, I don't know, this kind of blue or some purple. So play with this and choose the color you really like. If you want, you can also add a button. So let's type buttons. And I think I will use one of those. This button light. Let's add some margins. Margin bottom 5. And the same to all the elements below. Click here. And let's change the color of the ripple to light. Alright. And maybe let's make the button bigger. Button LG. Now let's copy the entire mask. And let's paste it to all other items. Now let's make the carousel works again by recovering data attribute. And we can change the text on the second and the third slide. Second slide. So just we can see it works properly. Now we can move on to the next section, which is main section. So inside of the main section, let's add a container. And as you remember from the navbar, container will add a margin to the right and to the left. And apart from this, it's also necessary to use it if we are using a grid. Without a container, the grid won't work properly. So grid is a very extensive topic, and in this tutorial I will only touch the surface. But if you want to learn more about Bootstrap Grid and to get to know in depth how does it work, in the description of this video you will find a link to the detailed tutorial about Bootstrap Grid. Right now let's go to MDB docs and in the search box type grid. And here you can find an extensive documentation about how the grid system works. As you can see here, Bootstrap Grid system uses a series of containers, rows and columns to lay out and align the content. It's built with Flexbox and it's fully responsive. So below is an example how the grid can look like. The outer wrapper is always a container. Then we have a row, which is a horizontal divider, horizontal wrapper, and inside of the row we can place columns. Within a Bootstrap Grid we can use maximum 12 columns. But we can specify which size each column should be. Let's try out this example. Let's copy the code and let's paste it here. And as you can see, here we have our columns. 1, 2, 3. So if we don't specify which size each column should be, they all will have the same size. And this is a breakpoint. So if the size of the screen is bigger than medium, in this case, the columns will be in line. But if we change it to, let's say, XL, that means only on extra large screens they will be in line. And if we resize the window, you will see they stack one under another. So let's say I want to have two columns, one slightly bigger and the second slightly smaller, and I want it to be in line on medium and larger screens. So I will use a breakpoint MD and I will remove the third column, and now I will specify that the first column I want it to be 7 unit wide and the second 5, because as you remember we can add up 12 columns. So 7 plus 5 is exactly 12. Add an image with a hover effect. So in the empty Bootstrap docs, let's type hover effects. And here we can find multiple examples about very nice hover effects. So let's copy the basic example. Let's paste it inside of the first column. All right. Now inside of the second column, let's add some heading. Let's say some simple lorem ipsum, and below a paragraph. And then maybe one more lorem ipsum with bolded text. And one more paragraph below. And what would be also nice is to have some spacing between our carousel and the section below. So let's go to the header section, and I'm going to add a class here, margin bottom, and we can specify the number of spacing. All right. By the way, we can also add a shadow to the carousel. Right now it could be nice to have some shadow over here, the same as we have here in the image. So to the carousel we can add a shadow 5 strong. It's very subtle, but believe me, it's here, and I can prove this by removing a background image for a second. Now can you see it? So as I mentioned before, it's very subtle, but it makes its job. You can believe me that these small details make a difference in design. And if you want to learn more about shadows, just go to MD Bootstrap documentation, type shadows, and here you can find different shadows that you can use in your projects, together with some nice effect like this hover effect, for example. All right, let's go back to our image. So to make an image responsive in Bootstrap, we can use two classes. The first one is W100, and it will set a given image to 100 of available space. So in this case, the size of the column, or we can use img fluid. In most of cases, they both work almost the same, but with a slight difference. If the image is smaller than the size of the parent, with img fluid, it will not stretch full width. It will be smaller than available space. And in some cases, this is a desired result. But if we use W100, it will always stretch full width, even if it's smaller than the size of the parent. So if the quality of an image is very low, you will see the pixels if you use W100 with a small image, but it will still keep the size of the parent. So it depends on what do you expect from the image. And if we remove these classes, you will see that the image is broken. So I will go with W100 because in my opinion it's a bit safer. And as you can see here, we are also using mask, but with one different. Now it works on hover. So if we increase the contrast, you can see it's very light. And the same as with a normal mask, we can play with the colors. But for now, let's stay with this very light mask. By the way, if we want, we can increase the roundness of the corner by simply adding some additional units to the rounded class. So with 5, it's slightly more rounded, but we can go with 6, 7, 8. I think you get the point. So let's stay with 5, let's say, like this. And as you can expect, it's responsive by default. By the way, it could be nice to have some margin on mobile between an image and the text. So what we can do is to add margin bottom 4 to the column of an image. Now let's move on to the next step. We'll need another row. So let's create a row, and between a row let's add some divider. And I will add a margin to the top and to the bottom of this divider. So margin Y 5. So in Bootstrap you can add a margin by using an margin class. Then you specify the direction, and Y stands for Y-axis. If we set to X, it will add a margin to the left and to the right. And with Y, it will add a margin to the top and to the bottom. And of course, we can set a margin to the left and to the right by using end and start classes. If you want to learn more about margin, go to documentation and type spacing to the search box. And here you will find a detailed documentation and examples about adding margin and padding via classes to the Bootstrap project. Alright, inside of this row, we'll add 3 equal columns. So col MD4, oh, it should be class, col MD4, and let's copy this 4 times. Now inside of each column I want to add a card. So let's go back to the documentation and let's type cards to the search box. And here we can find tens of examples of cards. So I will use this card with a ripple effect. So let's copy the code. And let's paste it to our project. 1 card to each column. And if you want to increase the space between cards, we can use a gutter class. And if I add gx5, you will see it will have a very big spacing. And I think it's nice, but I don't want such a big spacing on mobile, so I will add a breakpoint. So right now it will have such a huge spacing only on large and bigger screens. Let's change the images inside of these cards. Let's add some heading to this section. Let's say I will use H4 and let's type some text. Some margin would be useful. Margin bottom, let's say 5. And now I want to center all of this. So to center the text, we can use text center classes. And if we want to center all the text inside of these cards, I can add a text center to the row. And now is the time to create a form. So below our cards, let's add another divider, and actually we can copy this. And below, let's create another row. And inside of this row, we'll create only a single column, col MD, let's say 6. And for a testing purpose, let's type some text inside of this And as you can see, the text is inside of the column. If we add a background color to this column, you will see its size. But the problem is that in this specific case, we want this column to be centered, and we can achieve this with using a Flexbox. So row is by default, row is using a Flexbox by default. So what we can do is simply to add a class justify content center, and the column will be center. And what is an advantage of using it this way? So if we resize the screen, you can see that it's perfectly adjusted to the mobile size, but if we make it bigger, it's still in the center and it has some nice margins to the left and to the right. And we can easily manipulate the size of this column by changing the number of units inside of the column. So it can be really small, or it can be even full width if we set it to 12 columns. So I think, let's say 7 or maybe 6, it's enough. Let's remove this background color and this text. It was only for testing purpose. And now we can add a form to this. So let's go to MD Bootstrap documentation and let's type forms in the search box, and let's click overview. And here you will find an extensive documentation about forms with multiple examples. By the way, in this tutorial I will only touch the surface of this topic, but in the description of this tutorial we will find a link to detailed video about Bootstrap forms. So if you want to learn more about this, just read the documentation over here or watch the video. So in the page, like our project, we usually add a contact form. So anyone that is interested in our offer can contact us and we can start a cooperation. So here you can see a contact form. So let's copy this and we'll paste it inside of our column. And as you can expect, it works out of the box. Let's add some nice heading. I can copy this one. All right. Now the final step, footer. Let's go to documentation and let's type footer. And here you can find multiple examples of the footer. And what's more, you can also have a look at some dedicated, especially designed examples. What's more, you can also have a look at builder. So here we can specify how our footer should look like, what elements it should have, and basically we can specify anything we want in this generator. So actually let's try out this generator. So I want everything from here apart from the form, because we already have a form. So I unchecked this checkbox, and right now I can simply copy the code and I will paste it below my main tag. And it works out of the box. What would be nice to have some spacing between our form and the footer. So let's find the form. Well, actually I can add a spacing to the main section, because the form is an ending of this section. So let's add margin bottom 5. This tutorial is getting a bit too long, so I'm not going to tell a lot about the footer component, but if you want to learn more about this, in the description of this video you will find a link to the detailed tutorial dedicated only to the footer. So thanks to this video you will find many ways how to customize footer, how to integrate it with different components, and you will know everything you should know about footer. Right now, if you want to use it like me, just go to documentation, go to generator, generate the footer you like, and just copy the code. Or you can read the documentation, or you can watch the tutorial that you will find in the description of this video. Alright, our website is ready. It looks great both on mobile and desktop. We have this impressive hero carousel here with beautiful images. We have some featured content, we have cards, we have a contact form, and we have a footer, everything pixel perfect with nice effects. And we can easily customize it and adjust it to our needs. Perfect. By the way, did you know that thanks to MD Bootstrap you can use free hosting for your projects? We call it MDBGo and it's really great. Visit mdbgo.com for more information. In the description of this video you will also find a link on how to use MDBGo hosting and how to install MDB CLI, which is a fantastic and free supporting tool that provides many useful features and functionalities. Now let me just show you how easy it is to publish our newly created project on the internet thanks to MDBGo. I already have MDB CLI installed on my computer, so all I need to do right now is to run my terminal and enter the directory where we have our project. So here is the folder with the MDB package we downloaded and where we have been working on our project. So let's copy its path and let's enter it in the terminal. Then all I need to do is to type a single command, mdb publish, and I will choose npm package manager, and then I need to choose a name for my project. I will name it website 2022. Now let's accept all other options, and after a few seconds my project is available in the internet at this link. Let's see if it works. And yes, it does. Super fast and extremely useful. If you like this tutorial, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you found it useful. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and see you in the next tutorial.